And could come and take a seat. Um,
Oh, I thought we were sharing.
all right. Well, thank you, everyone, and welcome to Bayfirst DEI Women's event. And we are excited to close out Women's History Month with this fun and hopefully insightful event. Glass ceilings are meant to be broken. My name is Manjari Ganti. I'm the Chief Compliance Officer at Bayfirst, and I'm also co-chair of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. And before I get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our vendors who's helped making this event successful. We have our amazing appetizers, which is back in the conference room. So if you have not grabbed food, please do so. And that's provided by Special Times Catering, owned and operated by Executive Chef Kathy Glenn. Our delectable cake pops, provided by Nutty for Bread, owned and operated by Erica Gomez. Our delicious wines being provided by Epicurious One, owned and operated by one of our panelists, Stephanie Love, and features wines created by females, Mimosa wine by Desiree Noisette, and Safriel House created by Lynn Safriel. Our tables, chairs, and linens are provided by Outside the Box Rentals, owned and operated by Anne-Marie Hanecki. And of course, thank you to our very own Lisa Montero, the banking center manager of this location here in Carrollwood, for allowing us to use this space to host this event. And if you've noticed, there was a theme. They are all women-owned businesses. And before I move on, absolutely. And before I go on to introduce our moderator and our panelists, I would like to welcome Jessica Ravelli, the president of Working Women of Tampa Bay, to join me and say a few words to kick off our event.
Thank you. I am so glad to be here. Thank you, Lisa, for hosting us in this beautiful location. I have not been to this location yet, and it is big and beautiful. I was like driving down Northdale Maybury. I'm like, wow, that is a statement bank right there. You mentioned theme, that these are all women-owned businesses that you mentioned who are vendors today. They're also members of Working Women of Tampa Bay. So it's always great when we can give business and share business and support women-owned businesses. So thank you for that. And so great I've had Kathy's food for the last 14 years. So when they were asking for a caterer, I'm like, I know just the person. So I just want to say I love this bank. Valerie and I have been partners now for almost 5 years, I think. I've been a customer of the bank pretty much that entire time. And what I've noticed with looking around this market is there really is a true commitment to growing women-owned business and growing minority-owned businesses from this bank. And what I love is it's not just the commitment of the lending, the business banking, it's the support, like what they're doing today with having 3 women-owned businesses showcased today, and of course the panel. And it's like they literally put their money where their mouth is. And that's so important because there's, sometimes out in the market, you see a lot of people talking about how they support women-owned businesses, but you don't always actually see it. And I've seen the numbers that Valerie has shared with me, and we've done stories and shared stories within the Working Women community about the women who have been helped from the bank. And I can honestly tell you, I've seen businesses grow thanks to the support that they're getting from Bayfirst Bank. And that is a big deal. When you're small and you're tiny and you're growing, and like Erica's new and growing her business, every dollar counts. And when you have a bank that's supporting you through that, it's like a weight lifts off your shoulders. And I think they literally are doing that for the women-owned businesses that are their banking customers, and also just the general community as they support women's programming like they do through Working Women. My final message is I also have a foundation, Working Women Foundation, through our it's a nonprofit connected to our networking group, we've been able to give $100,000 worth of support to women-owned businesses, and it's because of Bayfirst Bank and other sponsors that we are able to do that nonprofit work. And so I'm just grateful for the partnership and grateful for the opportunity to say welcome and happy, like we're kind of like doing a finale of Women's History Month, and just grateful to be here. So thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jessica. We know that the Working Women of Tampa Bay does great work for small businesses out here, and we're very proud at Bayfirst to be partnered with you. And without further ado, I am pleased to introduce you to our four panelists today. And I apologize, I am going to read straight from my printout because these women are so accomplished and I want to make sure I get it right. So we will start with Cheryl Wudun. She is the first Asian American woman to win a Pulitzer Prize. She is a business executive, an entrepreneur, and best-selling author. Cheryl co-founded Full Sky Partners, which is a consulting firm focused on double bottom line ventures, mostly in healthcare and technology. She also runs Christoph Firms, a young vineyard and cider apple orchard in Oregon. Cheryl's one of the small handful of people who have worked at the New York Times both as an executive and a journalist. She is a member of the Harvard University Board of Overseers, as well as numerous other boards, including Bayfirst. And Cheryl's also a former member of the Board of Trustees at Princeton and Cornell, and she has a bachelor's from Cornell, a master's in public administration from Princeton, and an MBA from Harvard Business School. Now, before I move on, I do want to make a side note here that Cheryl has come to us from out of state, and we are very, very happy that she has made the time for us today, but she does have a flight, and we know about that traffic on 275. So we will be, so she will be stepping out a little bit early, but she will still engage obviously in the panel in the beginning, but if you do see her leave, it's because she's trying to catch the plane. And next, I'd like to introduce Ann Bartlett. She is the founder and owner of the South Tampa Trading Company, a lifelong parade and glitter fan, and a member of Ye Local Loyal crew of Grace O'Malley. 9 years ago, Ann decided that Tampa needed a place to shop for all things Gasparilla. Of course they do. She combined her retail experience, love of sewing, and fascination with all things shiny to open a store that sells pre-made costumes, fabrics, trims, and beads. During the COVID pandemic, South Tampa Trading Company pivoted from costumes to fill the gap in mask supply. In early of March 2020, they were approached to make washable masks. They created 18,000 masks in 7 weeks by hand. That is just amazing. And South Tampa Trading Co. supplied masks to assisted living facilities, local hospitals, bus companies, homeless shelters, Lutheran services, foster homes, as well as sending them out to 48 other states and 3 different countries. That is just fantastic. Stephanie Love is a WSET Level 3 certified wine professional and owner of Epicurious One. She has some samplings back there, so please don't forget to grab a glass. She is a wine educator and event curator with more than 10 years of experience curating wine-themed events, tastings, dinners, and classes from casual to fine dining experiences for groups of various sizes. Stephanie also currently serves as a customer experience manager for Step Up for Students, which is a state-approved nonprofit scholarship funding organization that helps administer 4 specific scholarship programs for Florida school children. Stephanie is a proud member of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority, the St. Pete Chamber of Commerce, and a 2019 graduate of the Entrepreneurial Academy. And I would like to then introduce you to Robin Oliver, currently serves as both the Chief Financial Officer and Chief Operating Officer for Bayfirst. Prior to joining Bayfirst in 2018, Ms. Oliver served as Controller for a financial institution in Kentucky, and for the first 16 years of her career, she served as multiple financial institutions as a public accounting auditor with Crow LLP. Mrs. Oliver is a certified public accountant and received her BA in accounting from the University of Kentucky, and I can't tell you how much Bayfirst is very lucky to have her. And last but definitely not least, I would like to introduce our moderator for today's discussion, Tom Zernick, the president of Bayfirst National Bank. And Tom, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Manjari. And Jessica, can you please tell the crowd that that was a non-paid comment, because that was really darn good. I hope we have it on tape. That was fantastic. I wanted to tell all of you I'm excited to be here tonight. And I woke up really early this morning. We had our board meeting, and I was getting ready, and I put C-SPAN on. And President Biden was celebrating the Women in Business History event at the White House yesterday. And he rattled off a few facts about women-owned businesses. And I was so blown away by some of what you guys do for us. I wanted to share with you just a quick summary of a couple cool things before we start the questioning. 42% of all US businesses are owned by women. How about that? Women-owned businesses employ 9.4 million workers. $1.9 trillion in annual revenue come from women-owned businesses. 1,800 new women-owned businesses are formed every day. 1,800. In 2020, the average annual revenue was $330,000 from women-owned businesses. In 2021, 49% of all startups were formed by women, almost half. The sad part, only 2.4% of venture capital funding goes to female-owned businesses. We're lucky to work in Florida. Florida is the 4th largest women-owned business state in the nation. Bayfirst last year set a goal of $100 million in minority-owned business loans. Okay, so that's female-owned and all of the ethnicities that we support. $100 million. We were very concerned about that. We told the press about it, that we were going to do it. I'm pleased to tell you in 2022, we did $220 million in minority-owned business loans. 173 million of that went to women-owned businesses, folks like all of you here in the room. So a little bit about what you guys do for the economy, the gross national product, and how Bayfirst tries to play an important role in the delivery of capital to all of you in the room. My first question today, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time with Cheryl on this first question, and also Rob and Oliver. Today's session, glass ceilings are meant to be broken. What does it take to be a woman in a historically male-dominated business?
Well, so I'm going to start off with something much broader, but partly because of my background. When I first was a correspondent, I started off in China, and I'm a Chinese American, so I kind of fit in with the crowd. I remember thinking here, I had been on my honeymoon with my husband. I bought it in Italy. I had bought this Italian jacket. I was walking the streets in China for the first time, and I was really happy. Here's my home country, my ancestral country. I'm walking down the street, and Chinese refer to foreigners as foreign devils. And of course, I'm thinking myself as a foreigner. And I'm walking down, I see these 3 Chinese men who are wearing leather jackets, and mine is so much nicer, so I smile. And they look at me, they say to each other, 假洋鬼子, which is fake foreign devil. So I was not a foreign, I was a fake foreign devil. I was trying to look like a foreign devil by wearing my Italian jacket. So I could already see right then that I was not a Chinese, I was a Chinese American. So that gave me a lesson. So when I went to Tokyo, when I went to Japan, let me tell you about Japan. I was learning the Japanese language. Okusan means wife. Wife in Japanese means back of the house. Those are the words, back of the house, because the woman was always in the back of the house. So this is a word that's used now. They just go okusan, and they forget that it means you're in the back of the house. And then when I was learning, we were giving speeches, and my husband and I were learning together. And so my husband would give a speech, and I say, the horse is red or the car is green, and I'm going to be driving it. And then I go up, and I'm saying, this is all in Japanese. I say the horse is black and I'm going to be driving the car. And she goes, you have to say to omoimasu, which means I think. I have to add, because I'm a woman, I have to add I think to every sentence, whereas he didn't, because he could state a fact, but I had to say I think. So that entire context taught me a lot about how to function as a minority, because I was not just I wasn't Japanese. I was a little rank below because I was a woman. I was Asian. I was not Japanese, so I was below the Japanese woman. So I'm not just the back of the house. I'm sort of in the backyard of the house. And then what was very interesting, so I look at role models everywhere. And one of the role models, because I was covering business and I was interviewing a lot of entrepreneurs in Japan. So one of the interesting entrepreneurs, you can imagine, Japan is kind of a discriminatory culture. And so the Japanese, like 98% of the population there is Japanese. They are a wonderful culture, but there's one part of it that is just frustrating because it's a homogeneous culture. But there is a group of Koreans that have been over for decades in Japan, but they tend to be kind of discriminated against or isolated. Like, for instance, they don't get to Tokyo University, the best university in Japan. They don't get to be in the Ministry of Finance, which is the premier place. They don't, get elected prime minister. Don't get all those prime wonderful positions. But there was one entrepreneur who had started this e-commerce business. And I thought, wow, he's kind of interesting. Let me just go interview him. And it turns out he's a Korean. He's a Korean Japanese. And I thought, he's already so big in Japan. He can't get much bigger, right? Well, boy, was I wrong. This Korean overcame all of the discrimination against the society. And this is, it can be quite overt in Japan. And now Masayoshi Son is one of the biggest venture capitalists in the world. So it just was so instructive that you can overcome your minority position. And so we really have to remember that people can succeed.
Great. Hey, Robin, how about you? You've grown up in the accounting world and obviously banking world. What does it take for a woman in a historically male-dominated business to make it work?
Well, I don't know. I just want to hear Cheryl talk some more because you have such interesting stories. But the first thing that came to mind when I was thinking about this today was being an excellent multitasker. I think as women, and they talk about it in the media all the time, that women, even if they have a wonderful partner at home, tend to share more of the load at home. Even the things like, oh, wait, it's wear your favorite character at school today. Who's going to remember that? Well, that's going to be me, right? So I think I learned along the way to just be really, really efficient. And some of you that work with me probably think maybe too much so, but, just really organized, really efficient. And, that's for a reason. My college roommates will tell you that was not me. I learned this somewhere along the way. So that's part of it. And I would tell advice, for women or just folks that are young in their career, be curious, be inquisitive. I think you walked up to the guy because you were interested in how he got successful. I mean, you can do that in any company, Bayfirst or otherwise. When you see somebody that's doing something interesting, you're just learning more about where you work, not just your specific role, but about the company as a whole. I think that's really important, and that's what I would tell everyone.
Great. And again, this second question, I'm going to ask Cheryl while we still have her to respond. And then Stephanie, I'll ask you to respond to this question as well. Cheryl, describe your leadership style and how you lead others. Is it different from your male counterparts?
I've seen so many different leadership styles, and some are much more sort of autocratic, and that can get a lot of things done. I mean, operating on fear, I think it really can work. I mean, I've been in situations where I'm so scared if I don't do this right, if I don't do this really well, it's not going to get done. So I can understand that. But I also think there is the servant leader model. And so I've seen that as well. And I think that it also depends, though, upon your audience. And so I always think that, you want to let other people, come up with the ideas because they'll have greater ownership over it. I mean, at the same time, though, as a woman, it's tricky because then people think, oh, she has no ideas, or, she hasn't done anything. What has she done for me? But you really have been empowering them. So it's tricky. I have been, there is a stereotype about the Asian American, as you can imagine. And, sometimes it's like, oh, Asian Americans are meek, they're quiet, they don't talk so much. And so if you use that kind of low key style, people think, oh, she's kind of meek, So it just really depends on who the audience is. And you have to kind of be a chameleon, which isn't to say that that's, deceptive. It's just that, you have to look at who you're talking to and who your audience is to figure out what is the best style for that person. It's sort of like, oh, that person likes to, be in contact by text. That person likes email. That person likes the phone. So I think of it that way.
Stephanie, same question. Describe your leadership and how you lead others. And is it different from your male counterparts?
I wouldn't say that it's necessarily different because I've definitely learned a lot of things from male leaders. And I don't know if you would call it a specific style that you can put into a box, kind of like what Cheryl was saying, depending on the situation, you have to lead accordingly. So I just have some principles that I follow, and they are as follows. I don't ask anyone on my team to do anything that I would not do or have not done before. So, like, case in point, I will not ask my team to wash glasses, open up wine, do the things that I have never done before or will not do because, oh, I'm the CEO. I get in the trenches with them and do what needs to be done, regardless of what my title may be. Then I also ask them for ideas because my thought process is this. If I'm the only one coming up with ideas, we're only going to go as far as my smarts will take us, and that's not very far. So with us together, synergistically working together, the sky is the limit. And then two, they bring different perspectives than I do because their life experiences are different, their skill sets are different. I always want to have on my team people who are smarter than me in different areas, and let them do what they do. Not micromanage them, but then empower them to do what it is that they're skilled at. Then another policy or, if you will, technique or however you want to describe it that I use is this: transparency. I'm very honest with them and let them know if I don't know something, or if I'm not sure about something, let them know that and make sure that they're aware of what changes are coming before they come down the pipe, instead of just hit them with, okay, this is what we're doing today and this is how things are going to go. And I know I didn't tell you about it beforehand, but this is what it is. No, we're going to talk about it together and we're going to figure it out together as much as we possibly can, instead of me forcing change on them. Be aware also too of the needs of my individual team members, because some people, you just give them directions and they're off and running. Then you have some people who you got to explain the why. If they don't understand the why behind you're asking them to do something, then it's like, okay, why should I do this? Know your team, know what they need, and lead them accordingly.
Wow, that was great, Stephanie. Thank you. The next question I'm going to ask Anne and Cheryl to comment on, with competing priorities between your work and your personal life, how do you manage your time so that you balance both? And Cheryl, we'll start with you.
Oh, not very well. It is just really hard. I mean, there is just no formula. I have missed so many of my kids' plays. It's like, oh, did I miss the teacher parent conference? I mean, it's just, but you juggle things. You just do your best. And I think that's all you can do. And you're constantly shifting priorities. Sometimes if there's a work deadline, you just got to get it done. So you stay late and you miss dinner, with the kids. But other times there's, if you can make the school play, that's great. Then you go and do that. I think that what's really important is to have, in terms of home life, is making sure that there are certain things at home that that are really, really important and that you don't want to miss, and make sure that's like in your calendar. It's on your mind. It's part of your mind share. And same thing with work, because there are always going to be things that just fall through the cracks. You just have to be prepared and not get stressed out about it.
Hey, thank you, Cheryl. And Anne, same question. With competing priorities between work and personal life, how do you manage your time so that you balance both?
Well, if you had seen me on Saturday night running down 7th Avenue, following the Gay Pride Parade in a 16th century Elizabethan ball gown in rainbow colors, because I had just been in the Pride Parade, but I was late babysitting my granddaughter, and so I was running down 7th Avenue, dodging all the flying beads that were coming at me as I was running to get to my granddaughter. I would say not very well, but I did make it, and I made it for bedtime, and we had a grand evening, and it was a lot of fun. One of the things I have found in juggling, the same thing is it's very hard. Things, you've got to set priorities of what's most important to you, and you can't let your personal life completely go away for your business, but you can't let your personal life take over your business either. So you've got to come up with that balance. But I think a big important part of it is allowing yourself to turn loose of things. You don't have to be the one that makes all 5 pies for Thanksgiving. It's a busy time. And although we do take that on ourselves, because that's, I know how to do this and this is my role. And it was my role before. I was a stay-at-home mom before I opened my business. I worked in marketing before I had children. I worked for a retailer, so I worked full-time then and then stayed home and then went back into work. So you have to let go of some things. And so you don't have to be the one who does everything right. And you don't have to be the one in charge of it. Someone else can take over for you and it'll be just as good. And it's better to have you be there in the moment and have you enjoy it than to have it be perfect and have you be so stressed out and strung out that it's not any fun. And that's the way it works in business as well. You're not effective in your job and with your company if you're so strung out over all the details when there's other people who can do what you're trying to take on your shoulders. So delegating.
No, I love that. And thank you so much. Hey, the next question, we're going to go back to Stephanie, and then Anne, we'll go back to you on this as well. What advice do you have for women looking to grow either their own business or move up in the company they work for?
You have to have a crazy belief in yourself. You really do. And see yourself doing that thing before it happens. And I would say for starting a business, be okay with starting out small so that business doesn't totally consume your life. Because once you put out there that you're going to start a business, everybody's going to want to tell you, oh, you should do this. Oh, you should do that. Oh, what about this? Oh, what about that? And you can't possibly do everything. And people mean well, they want to support you, but it's okay if you start out very small, building your business. That's something I had to learn, and I wish somebody had told me that. So I'm telling you advice that I wish somebody had told me. No, you don't have to do everything today. Build, start out small, while you're also making sure that you make time for the things that matter, like your family or what have you. Or if you're like me and you work a full-time job while building a business, don't get stuck in a rat race of going from one job to the next and you're not resting, you're not taking care of yourself, you're trying to meet all the demands that are placed upon you. Don't do that to yourself. Take time to build that business and it will get there, because what's truly for you is for you, and timing is everything. And then in terms of where you are, if you're working in a career and you want to go up higher within your career, we as women sell ourselves short all the time. We don't negotiate. You're never going to get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. So with that being said, ask for what you want. And then if you don't get it, ask, well, what do I need to have? What do I need to do in order to get there, and ask for a mentor or someone to help you get there. No is just for right now. It's a delay. It's not definitive. You know, that's what I would tell someone.
Thank you, Stephanie. That was fantastic. And Anne, we'll go back to you with the same question. You know, what advice do you have for women looking to grow either their own business or move up in the company they work for?
I think it's important that you not get too rigid on what you expect to happen. You don't, if you sit down and say, here's my game plan, I want to open this business, and in 2 years I'm going to do this, and in 4 years I'm going to do this, and in 6 years I'm going to do this, and then COVID happens. And you have to think, oh, what do I do now? At what point do I do this? And so it's all about the pivot, and it's how you pivot to come into a different aspect of your business, then it makes it even stronger. And so you have to be open to those areas that you can grow into that were not expected. And that's not always easy to do. That's always, that's often something that's going to be a challenge. So I think you just have to keep your mind open in that. And I do agree with you. You have to ask, if not now, why? And if not now, when? And if not now, how? And so when you're working in a corporation, those are your questions. And it's okay to ask those questions as women. And so I agree with that very wholeheartedly.
Great. I love that answer, Anne, and Stephanie. I love your comments on that one too. Hey, let's go back to Robin Oliver, and then we'll circle back to Stephanie on this next question. Stress is so pervasive and thus important to manage it. I know we don't have any stress at Bayfirst, so I'm not sure why I'm asking you, Robin, but to manage your stress, how do you unwind and disconnect, and what do you do for self-care?
She said it. I would love to tell you that I get up and run every morning or anything ambitious like that. But I love the spa. I love getting my nails done. I'm not the exercise girl. I'm a big believer in outsourcing. Anything I don't want to do, you're not going to catch me making anything on Thanksgiving dinner. They will not let me touch the turkey. So either somebody else is making something or we're ordering out. But even when I first started out as a young person right out of college, I knew that cleaning was not my forte. And that was the one luxury I allowed myself. Right. And so what's the most important thing to you that gives you time when you're off work, when you're on the weekends, to relax? Because I think that time is so precious. And so I try to protect it at all costs, and also not saying yes to everything. I think sometimes we feel like we have to say yes to everything. And I try really hard not to do that. So I make sure and give myself that break.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Robin. And, Stephanie, back to you.
Before I pass it,
yeah, go ahead.
If I could add yet to the S. So I was going to a meeting 20 years ago. And my husband said, why are you doing this? And I said, well, I was in charge of this event last year and I needed to go and tell them, what's going to happen this time. And he took my hand and he wrote no with a magic marker in the palm of my hand. And he said, you're missing a synapse between your head and your brain and your mouth, your mouth and your brain. He said, I want you just to hold up this hand and say no when you don't want to do it. So I hold up a no now and says, I can't do this. So yes.
I love it. Thank you, Anne. Stephanie, stress. How do you manage it? How do you unwind and disconnect? And what do you do for self-care?
Right. I'm still a work in progress. I learned this year that no is a complete sentence, because many of us as women, we have learned to say no, but then we add disclaimers and feel like we have to explain ourselves of it's no because, and then you stress yourself out thinking of how you're going to add that disclaimer. It's just no, period. End of story. You don't have to give an explanation, just no. So I have learned to say no. No explanation given other than no, I'm not doing it, can't do it, don't want to do it, just no. And how I unwind is okay. So of course, obviously I drink wine. But the other thing that I like to do, there are a couple of things. One is I take many breaks throughout the day and I play some ridiculous music that makes me happy. And I get up and dance. I'm not very good at it, but it sure does make me feel good. And then once I'm done doing that for maybe 5 minutes or so, I go back to work and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I got this. I can do this. Then secondly, my day job gifted me this awesome gift of a massage for my work anniversary, right? And it was so wonderful. I didn't know how wound up I was. I just was not aware. And I was like, you know what? I need to come back here. So it's non-negotiable. Once a month, I'm going to get a massage. I have one weekend out of the month for nothing, to do absolutely nothing. There is power in doing nothing. You don't always have to be on. You don't always have to do something. Pick however, whatever works for you. If it's one weekend out of the month, if it's one day during the week, set aside, or a couple of hours, set aside just for you to do absolutely nothing. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you, Stephanie. And Robin, we might have to get a boom box up on the second floor because I feel some dancing coming on.
Oh, you know I like dancing karaoke.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, we have one last question here, and I'm going to ask all the panelists to comment on it. You know, in closing, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received, and how have you used it? And we'll start, Robin, you've got the microphone. We'll start with you.
So, you know, I've been to several leadership classes throughout my career, very, very fortunate to have had those opportunities. And one concept that really stuck with me was the concept of victim versus player. And some of you that work with me have probably heard this spiel before, but, you know, think of it, somebody that's late to work every day. Right. And or often. Right. And they're like, oh, that traffic, it's terrible. Right. So that's why I can't be on time. Well, no, that's a victim mentality. What can you do about it? Well, you can frankly get up earlier, take a different way to work. You know, you are in control of certain things. And so that's a very simple example, but think about that as it relates to your work. And I think sometimes it's easy for us to fall into that victim mentality. And I see, you know, some folks do it sometime. And I think it's really important to figure out, like, I can't control everything, but what can I do? What can I change? And I think if I consciously, if I feel myself starting to get there, if I remember that and I start trying to look for ways to improve something or make it better and what I can control, then that helps me feel better. So.
Hey, thanks, Robin. And we'll go now to Anne on that same question. You know, what piece of advice have you received? And what the best piece of advice you received, and how have you used it?
Very soon after I had opened my business, I was in a taxi in Atlanta, driving to market. And I was describing to the taxi driver what my business was about, making costumes and supplies for parades. And he said to me, "Oh, you work in the paint department." And I said, "I beg your pardon?" And he said, "You know, it's a paint department job." He said, "You know, when you work in a Home Depot or a Lowe's or something like that," he goes, "you don't want to work in the plumbing department. Because when you work in the plumbing department, everybody's unhappy. Something's wet, something's broken, something's gross. You don't want to be in the plumbing department." He goes, "You want to be in the paint department because people are happy. They're having a baby. They bought a new house. It's a happy job." And he said, "You have a happy job." And I said, "You're right, I do. I have a really happy job. Nobody makes you be in a parade. You know, it's, you know, I'm sorry you have to dress like an Elizabethan, you know. Ta-da, you're queen, so bad, you know." But then I started thinking about it, and every company has a paint department. And so you just have to find the paint department in your company and work in the paint department and don't work in the plumbing department. My apologies to plumbers, but I think you can find the positive in all of it, and then that makes your job not a job. It makes your job a lot of fun, which is what mine is.
That was cool, Anne. Thank you. And Stephanie, how about you? What's the best piece of advice you've ever received, and how have you used it?
So the best piece of advice that I received was build your own table. Because in case you guys didn't notice, in the wine industry, most often wine professionals do not look like me by gender or color. So I am a unicorn, and I'm okay with that now. It took a while for me to be okay with that. And I had complaints, so many complaints. Like, why don't people make wine fun? It should be fun. Why is it so stressful? You tell someone about wine and they start apologizing immediately about, I don't know anything about wine. I feel bad. I feel this. Why does it have to be like that? Or why can't someone make it easier for people to understand? Then the other question, why doesn't someone promote wines made by women and people of color? Then I'm going to the powers that be and say, why don't you do this? And then someone told me, why don't you build your own table? And I was like, you know what? You're right. You're right. There are things that I can do. Because here's the thing that I learned about trying to get a seat at somebody else's table is that they're going to tell you where to sit. They're only going to let you eat what they want you to eat. They're only going to talk about what they want you to hear about. But when you build your own table, it's designed exactly how you want, and you don't have to convince somebody else of what you believe in, right? You build that table and people will come and you can feed them how you want, which for me, it's like wine is going to be fun, and there are going to be wines made by women and people of color, and we're going to pair it with food, and I'm going to help you find wines that you love. And make sure that the information that is shared with you is useful for your personal journey in wine. Then I've had such a freedom in that, in trying to build that table. So then I was like, well, I'm gonna start a wine school then, because the wine school I went to was very boring. And they used a lot of words that didn't make sense to me. And it was because of a cultural difference, it was mentioned earlier that I have a certification through Wine and Spirits Education Trust. Well, that's a worldwide recognized organization for wine professionals, but their home base is British. So then the terms and everything that they use are British. When they describe the aromas and flavors that they expect you to describe for the wines, they're going to be British. And if you're like me, African American, half of the things on that list, you don't know what they are because you never had them, you haven't eaten them, you're not familiar. So I was like, okay, how can I help someone else take what they know from their culture, foods and aromas and flavors they're familiar with, and then translate it back to WSET so they can pass the test? And I was upset because I was like, why is this somebody else? Why don't you do it? Build your table. You do it. And there's so much power in building your own table instead of asking for permission to sit at somebody else's table.
Wow. Panelists, Robin, Ann, and Stephanie, and obviously Cheryl is on her way to the airport. How about a really big round of applause for some great things? I will tell you that this has been my favorite hour of the last month. So thank you for. I've learned a lot, and I'm going to put the big NO on my palm too. We have a couple minutes left, Brandy and Manjari. I'm wondering, does anyone in our audience tonight have a question for one of the panelists? I know I asked 6 of them, but we couldn't cover everything because of timing. But anybody have a question for one of the panelists that we can address? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Adora Mamulu, and by the way. I own my own business. It's a shoe company called Kiri Chic, but I'm also still in corporate as well. One thing that I noted down was the saying no on your palm, right? At what point in time do you feel like it's okay to say no, right? Because as a small business owner, and trying to get your name out there, and building your own table with a platform, you have to go things, right? You have to be able to network. You have to be able to grow. What point in time are you able to say no and then take those one weekend of a month off?
Who wants to go first? I'll go. I could go. Okay. So you start saying no when you have it clearly defined what your business is and who your target market is, because then you can't go to every networking event or whatever that you're invited to, because maybe those different events aren't your specific audience. And if you're working during the day while trying to build your business, you have to figure out which networking opportunities are going to give you the biggest bang for your time, because your time is very limited. So once you're clear about this is what my business is, this is my target customer, how am I going to find them? Then pick one or two, networking opportunities are going to help you reach them, going to give you the biggest bang for your time or whatever. And then in terms of picking a weekend, start now. Now, because you'd be surprised how you can accomplish a lot in a little bit of time if you ask for help and also learn ways to work smarter instead of harder. You're going to need that downtime. You really do, because you need rest. You need to take care of your body. Yeah, that's going to be important now.
Anything else, Anne?
I
or
would say
Robin?
if you can't take a weekend, take 4 hours. It starts small. I have a hard time for the weekend, but 4 hours I can do. And so and also try to combine, if you can combine people who are asking things of you into putting two things together so you can get more than one market at a time. So, I combine groups sometimes. So that's.
You're good, Robin. Any other questions or we had a hand back there. Go ahead.
Thank you, Katrina and Tiffany also invited me. Thank you. So I did try to start a business once. I have a management consulting background with Booz Allen Hamilton, and I've since moved on. My struggle was always how to get started. I mean, management consulting is quite broad. I don't know about your industries, but how did you narrow to the specific industry? And then those first steps that you took, that's what I'm most interested in.
Go ahead.
Okay, so like with the wine industry, it's so vast, what you could do. I narrowed it down to what gave me the most joy, what gave me the most excitement, and I found that education was my niche, or is, I shouldn't say was because it still is my niche. So it's like narrow it down to what gives you the most joy, what you're passionate about, because you gotta, building a business is hard. It's hard work. So if you don't love it, you're not gonna want to put that work into it, And so with the management consulting, pick out what lights your fire, what gets you excited, what gets you fired up about it, and what industry. And that's okay, because there's niches, there's riches in niches. Someone gave me that piece of advice too. Pick your niche and work in that. And I think there was another question you asked too, but I forgot. What was it?
Just some of those first steps to get started after you kind of narrowed it.
Mm-hmm.
The first things
Oh my gosh, let me tell you, in the Tampa Bay area, it is very rich in support and services to women business owners to get started. You have Working Women of Tampa Bay. All of us here are members. The founder is here. Then there's the Small Business Administration. There's the Women's Center. There's so many. Oh, and another organization called SCORE. There's so many organizations that have free resources where someone would sit down with you and help you map out how to get started in all the aspects of your business that you need to take care of, like marketing, accounting, all the things. So you don't have to go this alone. I'm very blessed for the help that I still continue to get in the Tampa Bay area. We are very, very rich in resources.
I just want to add that if you have a great relationship with your banker,
Great idea.
or if you don't have one, you in the room, we can help make some of those connections for you. Make you what you don't know, you don't know. You can point that out.
I would say this really quick. Every organization you just listed, there's a female in here that represents that organization.
Wow.
So, fantastic job. And in the event that someone needs someone, let me know and I'll help direct people, because let's help all women.
Yeah. And I'd like to say that that's what I do with the bank, and probably one of the only banks in the Tampa Bay area that has a person like me that does that work with women. Yeah.
Great. Anne, any other comments? I know you're holding the mic.
Oh, that's okay. As far as starting a business, the way it happened for me was I had an interest in an area which was making costumes, and I just started talking to people who made them and who also participated in the same things I did and had small businesses and talked about how to build a small business. And retail's not a, brick and mortar retail is not a growing field. A lot of things going to online marketing, and so brick and mortar is a little bit different. And so I just reached out to a bunch of people who started giving me, ideas on things, and I sort of culled the ideas down into things that made sense to me and things that I enjoyed and things that I thought would go together. And then we talked about the pivot, and then we just pivot whenever things happen. So one of my pivots was during the pandemic, Google decided that I was a souvenir shop. I had never been a souvenir shop before. I sold things that said tampon, but I really was never a souvenir shop. But all of a sudden, I'm hitting #1 on Google for souvenirs. Well, you don't tell that no. I mean, that's advertising. So you go, okay, I can buy shot glasses now. So I went out and bought shot glasses, and I designed T-shirts. And I meet these wonderful people from Ohio who are going to the airport, and they've forgotten to get Aunt Mary a T-shirt, and so they come by and talk to us now. So we try to get things that are they're specific to Tampa, like we do local artisans, and we try to make it, a cut above, the beach people. But yeah, it's been a real interesting thing. So you just pivot to get where you need to go and find your thing and hold on to it.
Great. Well, thank you, Anne. And we are up against the closing time now, but I did want to mention to all of you in the room today, please make sure you grab one of our Celebrating Working Women T-shirts, and we also have some fantastic glasses back on Stephanie's table. So make sure you take some of those with you. And just in closing, I want to say that, as president of Bayfirst, I work with a pool of thoroughbred women, and I am really damn lucky. So here's to the women at Bayfirst.
Thank you for having us.
And one last round of applause for just a really great, inspiring panel to all of us. I'm sure our panel will stay around. We're going to network now, and feel free to answer any questions you didn't get answered during our session. Feel free to grab one of the panelists, and I'm sure they'll share their thoughts. But thank you so much for making this a really great night for me and for the rest of the audience here. So thank you.